Hello, dear ones. How happy I am to join you once again and share with you and with one another the miracle and joys of God's love. Father's Day is coming up soon, so I thought I would share with you one of my favorite dad stories. Most kids have a healthy respect for water, especially deep water. So when my daughter Rachel was quite small, she would love to go to the pool, but she avoided the deep end. She made sure wherever she was in the pool that her feet could touch bottom while still keeping her head above water. That was her depth, and she kept to it. One day at the pool, she asked if I would carry her on my shoulders. Well, of course I would. Then she asked if I would walk around with her up there. Well, of course I would. So I carried her around the pool, and as a result, carried her deeper than she had ventured before in that pool. And actually, had she not been on my shoulders, she would have been in seriously deep water for her. She didn't say a word, but I felt her tense as I ventured deeper. Her knees began to squeeze. Her arms held onto my head tighter as we went. Rachel instinctively knew this was a hazardous place for her to be, had she been on her own. But because she was clinging to her father, she was as safe as she could be, because although she was out of her depth, her dad certainly wasn't. My feet were firmly planted upon the bottom of the pool. So let me ask you, have you ever felt out of your depth? Have you ever felt in peril because you didn't have the capacity to deal with a situation? Do fears, anxieties, and worries continue to plague you? Here's what you need to know. God is never, ever out of his depth. God can handle every problem and challenge that comes your way. Whatever troubles you face, God can cope with it, even when you think it's impossible. And when you cling to your Heavenly Father, holding on as tight as you can, you will be safe and secure in his care. Think of Jesus walking on the water on the Sea of Galilee. His disciples on the boat were terrified, but Peter asks to join him, and yes, Peter is walking on water too. But then he sees the waves. The wind is howling, and Peter suddenly realizes he is out of his depth. Taking his eyes off Jesus, he begins to sink. But Jesus rescues him and takes him safely to the boat. Peter may have felt out of his depth, but Jesus wasn't. Jesus would not have had to fear had he kept his eyes on Jesus. Psalm 91 begins, "You who live in the shelter of the Most High, who abides in the shadow of the Almighty, will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." For even more assurance, I invite you to read the rest of Psalm 91 for yourself. You will see just how safe you are when you put your trust in God. On another occasion, the disciples are again sailing on Galilee. This time, Jesus is with them, sleeping as they go. A storm arises so severe that their boat is in danger of being swamped. It might even sink. I'm not sure how Jesus could sleep through all of this, but his disciples had to wake him. They needed everyone to grab an oar, or at least begin to bail the water out. It was a crisis situation. They need Jesus to pitch in too, otherwise they all might perish. But what Jesus did after waking astounded them. With a word, he rebuked the storm, and everything became calm. Then he turned to his disciples and chastised them for their lack of faith. Can Jesus handle the storms in your life? Yes. Jesus is never out of his depth. And when your trust is in him, neither are you. You can either believe that or continue to wallow in fear and anxiety. The choice is yours, but I can tell you, life will be so much sweeter when you put your problems in God's hands, for he is never, ever out of his depth. Don't be fearful. Trust and believe, dear friends, and life will go so much better. Take care. We will see you soon.